they can watch online, maybe they can turn on the closed captioning. Getting to the part of this book now, right, of this chapter, where we've already talked about the birth of Jesus, right? We talked about Herod and just who he was as a person, not just from secular sources, but just also from what the Bible says, right, in Matthew 2, about what that says about Herod. We know that he was, I was getting a thumbs down, right? He was paranoid man, he was secretive and manipulative, right? He was just that's not a very nice person. We talked about how he actually has a sort of relationship with Cleopatra of Egypt during this time, and his mother-in-law and her are friends. And when he, with the death of his brother-in-law, which is supposedly an accident, right, drowning at the pool party, she didn't like that very much. So there's tension between Egypt and Jerusalem, right? And so that could be a reason why God told Joseph to take his family to Egypt, because Egypt's not going to help them or help Herod find this baby boy. So we're going to start off with this question from last week. Why was Herod so upset when he heard about the birth of Jesus? He should be excited because he's at least half Jewish, right? He knows all the prophecies, but why would he be upset by that? It's a threat, right? He's a threat. Threat to what? His power, yeah. Herod wants the power. He wants to stay in power as long as he can, right? He even, I think we said that he even took out 42 nobles, right, when he came back, when the Roman Senate appointed him as quote unquote king of Jerusalem, right? Yeah, he's a threat. And so what does he do? Yeah, so baby boys, 2 years and under, he has them killed. And we saw that painting, right, from the medieval times. It's just terrible, right? That's why God told them to run to Egypt. So we also talked about the wise men, right? These men from the east, which are most likely from Persia area, Parthian area. And this is significant because that was the group that had attacked Herod back before he was king and forced him out. That's when he went to Rome and got appointed as king of Jerusalem. And then he came back and he defeated them and he got his kingship, right? But so then we were talking about the birth of Jesus, and three different parts of this. There's worship, so there's desire, fear, and worship. We talked about with these wise men with the desire part, right? Because they are not Jewish. They do not follow God, the Jewish God, but they know. They more than likely knew the prophecies because they were magi, just like Daniel was. He was the head of the magi. So they are familiar with his writings of the prophecies of a Messiah coming out of this area, right? But their desire was still there because they traveled hundreds or thousands of miles. Could have been just 3 of them, like everyone says. Or maybe there was a whole caravan of them showing up, which would have been more of a threat, looking like a threat to Herod, right? So they had this desire to come to worship this King of Kings, right? This King of the Jews. So Would you guys be scared if you were seeing Jesus face to face? I would, right? There's still some fear there. I would be like that Roman centurion. Like, I don't deserve to be here, right? I don't deserve you to help me, but I want you to help me anyway. So, we all, in a sense, come on now, mine is not connecting. There you go. We all experience fear when we are face to face with Jesus, but we have to submit to him. Well, why? Well, because we can't rule ourselves. That's been proven over millennia, right? We can't be in charge because absolute power corrupts absolutely, right? And we can't do what we want because, well, we've seen where that was from the very beginning, right? With Adam and Eve, and countless examples in between. So, but Jesus is the truth that threatens these power-hungry rulers, and again, that's seen throughout history, right? We talked about a long time ago that God keeps them in check. He will not let anybody get too powerful. We talked about that not only with these kings of Israel and the kings of like Assyria or Babylon and whatnot, but even more modern times, like when rulers try to take over the world, it doesn't work for them, right? So Herod is face to face with not just this 1-year-old little boy, but this is the King of Kings, and who would ultimately dethrone him and make him a servant. So we're still in Matthew chapter 2, if you guys want to go there. Looking at chapter 2, verses 9 through 10 right now, okay? It says, after they had heard the king, they went on their way, and the star they had seen when it rose ahead of them until it stopped over the place where the child was. When they saw the star, they were overjoyed. So, what did they do first? What did these wise men? Huh? They worshipped him, right? So now we're getting into the worship part, right, of Jesus' birth. Yeah, it says right there in verse 9, they stopped over the. So we're not quite there yet. I'm getting ahead of myself. But this one here starts on the star, right? On the star, which we talked about, is mentioned all throughout the Old Testament, even obviously with the birth of Jesus, that the stars are used for signs, right? God uses them as signs also to help light up the night sky, but they're signs, right? So the star had disappeared over Jerusalem, so the Magi would stop at Herod's palace. Again, right, that is the obvious sign of where they should go, right? So then the star reappeared, and the wise men rejoiced. Well, why would they rejoice? They're not Jewish. Yeah, they knew the prophecies. Go ahead. Yeah, this has to be a sign because we read about it, right? Yeah, exactly. So their heart's greatest desire is about to be fulfilled, right? They're gonna meet the Messiah, which is thousands of years in the making, right? And so they followed the star until it rested right where Jesus was being born. There's actually a pretty cool kids kind of a birth of Jesus Christmas story called The Star. And the girls like it. It actually comes from the perspective of the donkey that carried Mary. It's actually pretty cute little story. And that's a fun one. All right, so go to the next verse, verse 11. Here's where it says it. So, verse 11, on coming to the house, they saw the child with his mother Mary, and they bowed down and worshipped him. Then they opened their treasures and presented him with gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. So again, what's the first thing that they do right when they followed the star? They worshipped him, right? They would have gotten down on their hands and knees, maybe their faces, whatever, and they would have worshipped him. Okay, bow down and worship this little baby, right? Then they knew he wasn't a political leader. He's not a military leader. They know that he is the one, right? He's the one that all should worship. He is the one from the line of David, who is to be called what? Emmanuel, which means God with us. And if you don't believe me, go to Isaiah 7:14 and Matthew 1:23. Right? It says it there that it says in Matthew 1 that you're going to have a baby, and he's to be named Emmanuel. God with us. Same thing with Isaiah's prophecy. All right, let's focus on the gifts here. So they offer 3 gifts. I think this is where we just think there were 3 wise men because they each brought a gift. I think this is where that comes from. But they brought gold, which is obviously a precious metal. And again, what was the head made of the statue in Nebuchadnezzar's dream? Gold, right? Gold, which we will hit back on that here in a second. Frankincense, which is incense, right, from a tree. The tree is called Boswelliari canteri something. Yeah, I don't know. That's what I could remember Boswelliari because Boswell High School, Boswell. And then myrrh is a perfume used in like funerals and stuff like that. But what is the significance behind these gifts? Why would they offer these gifts? Gold, frankincense, and myrrh. Yes, Jim. Steal it. Oh, yeah. I never thought about that before. Yeah. Yeah. Connie, you're a very smart woman. That's what it is. Yeah, he's saying that, I doubt Joseph and Mary have much, right? And it takes money to travel, even back then. So he said these gifts actually gave them a little bit of security, to travel wherever God needed them to go. So I never thought about that before. But what is the significance then of gold, frankincense, and myrrh? Gold's for a king. Yeah. Again, right? If you look at the statue in Nebuchadnezzar's dream, it's gold, right? Gold is very well. He had lots of gold, right? That's why he was the head of gold. What else? What about the incense? That's for a priest. You're right. So where do you think that was burned at then? In the temple. Yeah. And what about the myrrh? For his death, as prophesied, right? As prophesied. So yeah, Gold is given to kings, so this recognizes Jesus is king, right? The frankincense is burned in the presence of God in the temple, right? So this recognizes his divinity as the one, right? And the myrrh is used in the embalming process, which is the significance of Jesus' eventual death. Okay, so these guys knew what they were giving this child, right? So these magi, again, knew exactly who Jesus was and what he was meant to do. Nothing. He was doing things that no human can do, right? So God protected Jesus, Joseph, Mary, as well as the Magi from being harmed in any way. Well, how do we know that the Magi weren't harmed? Well, it came to them in a dream, right? Matthew 2, verse 12 says, having been warned in a dream to not to go back to Herod, they went back to their own country, right? Back east. Because God knows what Herod could have done, right, if they had gone back to him. Okay, because he knows the hearts of all people. And Herod could manipulate the Magi, but he can't manipulate God, right? So Herod wins for now, but in the end, right, Jesus wins, right? He wins. All right, so that's actually the end of chapter 7. We're just going to reflect a little bit here. So this period in history, it says, is a lot like Beethoven's Symphony Number 9. Anyone familiar with that? I'm not. I'm not an orchestra type guy. Joel, you don't know that either? Well, what it does is the song, I can't play it because it's like really long. But it starts off kind of quiet and everything, and then it ends with loud, really fast, kind of triumphant sounding music. So this is kind of what this time and period is like, right? Because it's called the silent period. Seemingly God isn't there, obviously he is, but everything's kind of quiet, and then this ends, boom, with the birth of Jesus, this big triumphant ending, right? Okay. He's just setting the stage, right, for Jesus being born. He makes sure that Rome is in control, right? He makes sure that Greek is a main language spoken in this area. All these things are kind of being set up for this, right? We see the effect of Jesus' birth on the world and its leaders. Some had the desire, like these wise men, right, to travel hundreds or thousands of miles to witness the birth of the Messiah and to worship him. Others fear this Messiah, like Herod, right, who took very drastic measures to ensure that this baby is gone, right? So Jesus must be worshiped, served, obeyed, which is exactly what scares those who want to follow their own agenda, right? We are limited by time. We don't know the beginning or the end. We only know the past and the present. That's why it's better to place our plans on God and Jesus, in which there is no better one to rule the world. Even when God appears silent, he's not. Just like that poem in the very, very beginning, right? Footprints in the sand. Okay. He's always working to bring his purpose to history. Always working. So here are our discussion questions here. Explain why the period in history from 400 BC to 1 BC is often called the silent years. So, was God truly silent in that period? Well, there's no scripture, right? But he's not silent. Again, he's setting that stage, right? What does this tell you about God's nature? He's patient. What else, what Bill? What'd you say? He's always there, right? He's omnipresent, right? Omnipresent. Omni means always, Jeff or Joel. Okay, omni means always. Number 2, what were some of the contributions of Alexander the Great that gave to the future advancement of the gospel? So, what did he help set up? The Greek language. What else? Yeah, so a lot of Greek philosophers were kind of thinking, hey, maybe there's not many gods, maybe there's just one singular thing, right? And they also were more on like the freedoms, right? Like you are free to pretty much do what you want, right? These gods do not control you in that way, at least the many gods, right? Anything else? All right, what were the stages of the rise of Rome? Remember that? There's 3 of them. There's like like the old Rome, right? When they were pretty much just their own little city, right? Controlled by the Etruscans. The stage 2 was what? The Republic of Rome, right? Which was a lot of the, actually not the nobles, but like the top Senate was in charge, right? Consuls. And the last stage is the empire, right? When Caesar declares himself emperor forever, but that didn't last very long. Right. So then we get all those emperors after him. How was the rule of Rome different from the rule of other nations? Yeah. They did not force you to follow their religion, right? You were allowed to worship whoever you wanted. What else? Yes, so every conquered place, right, the men had to enroll into the military, right? That was like the only really payment that they needed, right? Was your men to join the military. Yes, Jim. So if Rome conquered you, you had all the privileges of a Roman citizen, right? If you were free, right? If you were free. The free men were the one who had to go into the military. If you're a slave, you didn't have to. If you're a woman, you didn't have to, right? So there was also, that caused some civil war, right? Some civil problems, right, among the Roman Republic at the time. All right, so why was Herod so upset when he heard about the birth of Jesus? We just talked about that one. He thought he was going to get dethroned. Yep, dethroned. Because they're still thinking physical king, right? Like physical throne, taking over like David, right? But this is not that kind of king, right? Number 6, what is the connection between Mark Antony, Cleopatra, Herod, and the birth of Jesus? And what does this show about the rule of God over the events of the world? So start with Antony and Cleopatra. What's their connection? It's a love story, right? Cleopatra was with Julius Caesar, but he was killed. The she runs into his best friend, Mark Antony. They get married, but then there's another civil war between Mark Antony and Octavian, who is Caesar's nephew. Octavian wins. Mark Antony commits suicide. She soon follows, right? Either with the snake or poison, whatever it is, right? But how is she connected to Herod? Not a child, no. It's someone's child for sure, but not theirs. Yeah, so she was close friends with with Herod's mother-in-law, right? And so when Herod's brother-in-law was allegedly drowned, right, on his own, allegedly, right, in a pool at Herod's place, right, his mother-in-law wasn't too happy. So then, of course, she goes and, clucks to Cleopatra, who then is like, you know what, I agree with you. I think he killed her, so then killed him, so then there is some tension there between Herod and Cleopatra, right? Jerusalem and Egypt, right? And then we obviously know about Herod and the birth of Jesus, right? So, but what does this show us about the rule of God over the servants over the events of the world? He's involved with the actions of mankind throughout history, right? Everything that has happened, like we said, he's omnipresent, right? It doesn't matter what's going on in the world, he's there, and he has a hand in it. Any other thoughts there? Jim, yep. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, yeah. If these people, abandon God and don't do what He says, and they want to do things on their own, like we mentioned, right? Things don't go too well for them. Everyone in here is a parent, at some point or another. Have you ever said to your kid, "Don't do that; you'll get hurt"? I've done it. I do it daily, right? It's kind of like we know what's better for our kids, right? Obviously, God knows what's best for us, right? So He's like, if you do what I say, then you will be fine, right? Now, I don't really feel sympathy if they get hurt when I told them not to do that, whatever it was. God obviously does care, right? So maybe I should work on that. I don't know. On that. All right, well, that's the end of chapter 7. Chapter 7. Is there anyone back there to go to the next chapter? Okay, thanks, Bobby. All right, so this next chapter 8, is called Anno Domini. This is from AD 1 through 330 AD. Perfect, right there. All right. Thank you, Bobby. So here are some of our questions here. 6 questions. How did the birth of Jesus impact the way we mark dates and years? Okay. What is significant about the emergence of the church on the world scene? Number 3, describe some of the tensions that existed in Israel during the birth of Jesus. Number 4,
How did the Roman Empire negatively and positively impact the emergence of the church? How did the first Christians see their beliefs in relation to the Old Testament? And number 6, what role did Africa play in the development of Christian truth and Christian thought? Okay, so we're going to turn the page from BC to AD, all right? So in the 6th century AD, so we're looking at the 500s, right? There's a man called Dionysius Exiguus, or he's also called Dennis the Little. That's not because he was small, because he was very humble. A very humble man, okay? He is developing a calendar to accurately determine when Easter would come every year, okay? And because Easter had been an official holiday of the church since the Council of Nicaea in AD 325. So it's a pretty important date, right? Especially for early Christians, right? Oh, and for us today. So remember, Rome is in charge still, right? They don't end for another 100 or so years after this date up there, 330. So they're still going. Okay? But so the Roman Empire marked dates differently. They marked their years by the consuls, which are these highest executive people, right? Spot in the Roman Republic. Okay, so for instance, Julius Caesar was assassinated in 44 BC, or on their terms, the 5th year of his consulship, right? And that was also the 1st year of Mark Antony. So that's how they marked things. Or they also use lunar cycles since a major event. So like when the Gauls sacked Rome, that's what they could base their lunar cycles off of, or for us, that's 390 BC. Okay? This is kind of what their calendars looked like. I know it's kind of hard to see, but up top, right? My mouse, there it is. Up top here, over here, this one says January, right? This next one here is February, and then March, April, May. It pretty much follows the exact months that we have, okay? And then there are names going down in those columns. Those names are the consuls and kind of when they started, okay? And the year would be down there on the bottom, those X's and the I's, right? So, because Roman leaders persecuted members of the church, Dionysius, or Dennis, right, decided to create a dating system marking time based on the number of years since Christ's birth rather than Roman consuls. Can you imagine that today if that never changed? That'd be strange. So these dates are known as Anno Domini, right? Which means in the year of our Lord. Year of our Lord. Or we just say AD, right? No, that's not after death. That's what we think, right? After death. No. This is when Jesus was born, right? So BC is known as before Christ, so before his birth, okay? Here's a question for you, which I'm going to mention here in a minute. Is there a year 0? Jed, is there a year 0? You don't know? No idea. Do we have 0, year 0? I think Don knows the answer. He's smiling. Get that little smug. What's a smug look on your face? You know, like. I'm just kidding. Yeah, there's no 0 time, right? Yeah. So yeah, there's going to be no year 0, right? Because we have before Christ, which is on the left, and AD, which is on the right. Okay? So, and what do you notice about this timeline here? Five-month AD or BC, right? Yeah. So even so, when Mary's pregnant, it's still BC, right? Because he's not born yet. It's still 1 BC, still within that first year of him being born, right? So, what does this new way of marking time highlight? Meaning what? It's all about him. Because if you go look back here, when does our time AD start? And when does BC end? When he's born. So what do you guys notice about this timeline here? Huh? A gap of 4 years? Oh, well, I'm just going off of this book, right? I've never heard about those 4 years, but if it was 4 years before his birth, it'd still be 4 BC. Oh, okay, I got you. Gotcha. Okay, so like when did it? Okay, I get you now. I get you now. But just based off this timeline here, what does it highlight? It's all about Jesus, right? Meaning what? What does this timeline show us? Thank you, Jed. He is the center. He is the center of it all. Jed, not just a hat rack, I see. Yeah, so yeah, the birth of Jesus isn't just another religious event, right? He is the center of it all, right? He is literally in the center of BC to AD. So everything, so that event changed everything, right? So this chapter, we will move from 1 BC to AD 1, because there is no year zero, right? It goes automatically from 1 BC to AD 1. Jumps right there, okay? And so now we are in the world of the year of our Lord, AD, right? And Anno Domini. Okay, so God came to earth in human form to bring not only salvation, but change the way the world operates. Change the world spiritually, politically, technologically, and socially. So his story, after all, is the center, right? Is the very center of time. So in this chapter, we will look at history through a single lens, the development of the church. Jesus' grand purpose is coming to earth to bring about salvation for mankind. For mankind was to bring together people from every tribe and nation to become part of his body, the church. the formation and advancement of this church, even in the face of all who sought to do away with it, are truly a remarkable miracle of God. We will look at what God did to bring his church into being, and then what he did to bless it and advance it in the world. Okay? So here's our first question. How did the birth of Jesus impact the way we mark dates and years? It was the specific dividing point between BC and AD, right? As we know it. But why change it? Why did this guy 500 years later decide to change it? Yeah, when's Easter coming? I got to get these eggs painted. I'm just kidding. Huh? Yeah, there was no Easter before it, right? He's 500 years or so after Jesus' birth, right? And so he could have put it as after death, right? But then what do we call that time, that 30 years when he was born? Like, what do we call that time? Right? Anybody else? All right, I can go through these next 2 slides and then we'll stop. All right. So the Roman Empire, right? They helped shape the world during Jesus' day. It helps us. So if we can understand the Roman Empire, can help us better understand Jesus' ministry and growth of the church. Okay. So these next 300 years are a lot like a soap opera. Anybody? I remember being young and my mom watched like General Hospital or Days of Our Lives. Are those shows still on? Oh my goodness. Okay. I always walked away. I couldn't stand those things. Right? So rulers would come and go with a lot of drama. Okay. Every one of them had a lust for power and it drove them kind of crazy. Right? I think you can think of several Roman emperors during this time that are just nuts. They're just crazy. So 2 Roman leaders that we're going to focus on that would actually impact Jesus himself and his disciples is Tiberius, who was emperor while Jesus was living, right? And Titus, who was emperor after he had already died. So he was emperor during the forming of the church, right? We'll stop right there. We'll pick up with Tiberius next week. We only got a few more weeks left, and then I'm done. So, thank you.